Aren't you even going to have any of this? Look, we've got Oysters Rockefeller, Beef Wellington, Napoleons. We leave this lunch alone, it'll take over Europe.
Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to Binging with Babish, where this week we're taking a look at foods from the 1960s. So foods that are inevitably going to revolve around one thing, butter. So we're going to start by needlessly showboating a little bit with a rolling pin and beginning the process to make puff pastry from scratch. This starts with 2 cups of all-purpose flour, a few pinches of kosher salt that we're going to toss together and create a little trench, almost like we're making fresh pasta. But there's no eggs. Instead, we're going to use 1 cup of ice water, added a little bit at a time, that we're going to toss together with the flour, reforming the trench, adding a few more tablespoons of ice water, tossing again, and eventually once it gets a little bit more chunky, we're going to start using a bench scraper, adding water a bit at a time until we get a dough that holds its shape that we're going to knead together, forming into a square, wrapping in plastic wrap, and chilling for 30 minutes while we get our butter square ready. We're starting with 2 sticks of unsalted butter, to which we're going to add a few tablespoons of flour, and using a floured rolling pin, we're going to start pounding together into one solid mass. We're going to keep reflouring the rolling pin, the work surface, and repounding out the butter until it is pliable enough to fold like this. That's breaking a little bit, but that's fine. Likewise, we're going to form this into a square, wrap in plastic wrap, and place in the fridge for 10 minutes while we roll out our lean dough. This stuff gets pretty sticky, so generously flour your work surface and start rolling out your sticky lean dough to a 12 by 12 inch square, or a 14 by 14 inch square. It doesn't really matter, just roll it out into a square, and then pound out your butter square so when placed in the center of the dough square diagonally, the corners almost meet the sides of the dough square. If this doesn't make any sense, I'm sorry, and just go out and buy some puff pastry because this is not worth the effort. Pinch the edges of the dough square around the butter square shut and begin to roll out to about a 12-inch long by 5-inch wide rectangle that we're going to fold into thirds like a letter. Then rotate 90 degrees and roll out again to the same dimensions and fold into thirds once more before wrapping in plastic wrap and letting rest in the refrigerator for 30 minutes. This is going to let the gluten relax so we can do it all over again. We're going to roll this out, same dimensions, twice, fold into thirds twice, refrigerate again for 30 minutes, and do it again. In the end, this creates a sum total of 729 layers of butter. No wonder puff pastry puffs up so much. Who knew that math could be so delicious? After 6 total folds, we're putting in the fridge for 1 hour up to overnight, and we're going to start seasoning our beef for the Beef Wellington. Season liberally on all sides with kosher salt and freshly cracked pepper, and place into a ripping hot cast iron skillet to sear on all sides. This doesn't lock in juices or any of that kind of nonsense. It's to introduce some roasty flavors into our Wellington. One of the things that helps a lot with that is a mushroom Duxelle. We covered how to make this in the Bob's Burgers episode from a few months ago, but basically just calls for finely processing some mushrooms, sauteing in butter, adding a little bit of thyme, some freshly crushed garlic, deglazing with a bit of cognac, adding a bit of heavy cream, and cooking down into a smooth pate. This is just going to serve to augment and intensify the beef flavors, as will a 1/4 pound of prosciutto that we're going to shingle onto several sheets of plastic wrap before brushing our roast down with English mustard, making sure that if it's tied with any string that's been cut off, and spreading our mushroom pate evenly onto the prosciutto, making the rock on which we shall build our church. Lift the strategically placed plastic wrap and use it to wrap the prosciutto and mushroom mix tightly around the roast. We're going to place this in the fridge for about 20 minutes to firm up while we roll out our puff pastry. Generously flour your work surface before rolling out your puff pastry to about 12 inches long and 3 inches wider on each side than the size of the roast. Then use the plastic wrap to wrap the puff around the pastry, and then use Gordon Ramsay's whipsy-flipsy method to tightly encase the whole thing together that we're going to place in the fridge to firm up for 20 minutes before brushing the whole thing down with a beaten egg. Then we're going to use the back of a paring knife to place some decorative scoring across the top, sprinkle the whole thing down with flaky kosher salt, and insert a temperature probe into the thickest part of the roast. We're then going to bake at 450 degrees Fahrenheit until the roast registers 120 degrees Fahrenheit internally. Let rest for 15 minutes and then slice open to reveal the fruits of your labor. A moment of silence, please. I mean, come on, dude. If you want to find the way to Christina Hendricks' heart, this is it, right here. and you guys know my policy on clean plates. It only happens when something is really, really, really good, but utterly incomplete without dessert. So it's time to make Napoleons. We're going to start by whisking together 4 egg yolks and a half cup of cornstarch into this light ribbony mixture, and then in a large saucepan we're going to combine 2 cups of milk and a half cup of sugar, along with 2 teaspoons of vanilla paste or vanilla extract if that's all you got. Whisk together and bring to a bare simmer, set aside, and a half cup at a time add the hot milk mixture to the egg and cornstarch mixture, very slowly so as to temper the egg yolks without cooking them. Once you've added about half the milk mixture, feel free to dump the rest in and return the whole mixture back to the saucepan. Cooking over medium heat, whisking constantly until a thick custard forms. We're then going to kill the heat and add about 2 tablespoons of crumbled butter, whisking that in until completely melted and incorporated. Just in case this thing was starting to get a little bit too healthy, we're going to put this into a metal bowl and cover with plastic wrap, pressing the plastic wrap down onto the surface of the custard, making sure that it doesn't form a skin while it is in the fridge. Meanwhile, we're going to bake some equally sized sheets of puff pastry that we've cut with a pizza cutter for about 6 minutes at 450 degrees and until light and puffy, and then we're going to weigh it down with another cookie sheet, baking for an additional 4 to 5 minutes until thin and crisp. Allow to cool completely before topping with our cooled creme pâtissier, layering, repeating, and getting ready to make our decorative top layer. We're going to start by making a thin icing out of a cup of powdered sugar, 2 teaspoons of corn syrup, 2 tablespoons of whole milk, and 2 tablespoons of melted butter. We're going to whisk together well to combine and take just a little tiny bit to taste and make sure that it tastes good, and then take a few tablespoons and set them aside to make a chocolate version. We're going to add a little bit of molten chocolate. If you don't have that, add some cocoa powder. Start by spooning some of the white glaze over the top layer of your puff pastry, smoothing out with an offset spatula, and then use a drinking glass to hold your pastry bag and fill it with the chocolate glaze that we're then going to very carefully pipe into perfectly straight lines across the length of the pastry. Add this to the list of things that I never thought I would be able to do properly. Then using a toothpick, or if you don't have a toothpick, a giant skewer, drag the tip back and forth across the frosting to make a decorative flare, which if you ask me is about as early 1960s as you can possibly get. Plate up on a nice serving plate and hack yourself off a piece, and revel in the 2,187 layers of butter in this Napoleon. I mean, technically, I didn't count them.